For generations, physics students have learned a simple picture of the proton. Two up quarks and one down quark, held together by the strong nuclear force. Each of those three valence quarks is traditionally assigned 1/3 of a property called baryon number, giving the proton a total baryon number of 1. It is a model that works extremely well for basic explanations of matter. But new evidence from the STAR experiment at Brookhaven National Laboratory's Relativistic Heavy Ion Collider, or RHIC, suggests that this familiar picture may be incomplete. Physicists now have evidence that the proton's baryon number may not simply be carried by its three valence quarks. Instead, it may be associated with a deeper structure formed by the gluon fields connecting those quarks, a Y-shaped configuration known as a baryon junction. If this interpretation continues to survive experimental tests, physicists may need to rethink how one of the proton's most fundamental properties is actually stored and transported. Baryon number is a quantum property used by physicists to classify particles such as protons and neutrons. Ordinary baryons have a baryon number of +1, while their antimatter partners have -1. Mesons, which contain a quark and an antiquark, have a baryon number of 0. In the traditional textbook description, each of the proton's three valence quarks contributes 1/3, so together they produce the proton's total baryon number of 1. That accounting system remains useful, but it leaves a deeper question unanswered. When a proton is broken apart in a high-energy collision, what actually carries that baryon number from one place to another? Does it remain attached to the original valence quarks? Or can it move independently through the gluon fields that bind the proton together? For decades, these possibilities were difficult to distinguish experimentally because the quarks and gluon structure usually move together. RHIC provided scientists with a rare opportunity to separate them. At RHIC, scientists accelerated heavy atomic nuclei to nearly the speed of light and collided them at enormous energies. These collisions produced thousands of new particles and recreated conditions similar to those that existed shortly after the beginning of the universe. During these experiments, researchers noticed an important pattern. In the central region of the collisions, known as midrapidity, STAR detected more baryons than antibaryons. Newly created particle-antiparticle pairs should contribute equal amounts of baryon and antibaryon number, so any excess of baryons in this region must carry information from the original colliding nuclei. The puzzle was how that baryon number traveled so far away from the fast-moving incoming particles. If the original valence quarks alone carried baryon number, they would need to lose a very large amount of their forward momentum. But another possibility offered a different explanation. Perhaps the baryon number could move through the gluonic structure of the proton instead. The alternative idea is known as the baryon junction. In this picture, the three valence quarks of a proton are connected through gluon fields arranged in a Y-shaped topology. Gluons are the carriers of the strong nuclear force, the interaction responsible for binding quarks together inside protons and neutrons. Unlike quarks, gluons carry no electric charge. The junction idea proposes that baryon number may be associated with this connected gluonic structure, rather than being independently attached to each valence quark. During an intense collision, the valence quarks could continue traveling forward, while the junction loses more momentum and remains closer to the center of the collision. The junction could then connect with newly produced quarks and form a new baryon. In that scenario, the original proton's baryon number would effectively be transported without requiring its original three valence quarks to travel with it. This mechanism offered physicists a concrete prediction that could be tested experimentally. To test the idea, the STAR collaboration compared the transport of baryon number with the transport of electric charge. This comparison is especially useful because valence quarks carry electric charge, while gluons do not. If baryon number always moved with the valence quarks, then electric charge and baryon number should be transported together in a predictable relationship. But if a neutral gluonic junction can carry baryon number independently, the two quantities could become partly separated. Starr investigated this using collisions of ruthenium-96 and zirconium-96 nuclei. Both nuclei contain the same total number of nucleons, but they contain different numbers of protons and therefore different amounts of electric charge. Ruthenium-96 has 44 protons, while zirconium-96 has 40. By comparing the two collision systems, researchers could study whether baryon transport followed electric charge transport as closely as the traditional velociquark picture predicted. The comparison produced one of the most important results in the study. In the most central collisions, Starr measured significantly more transported baryon number relative to electric charge than expected from a simple velociquark model. The normalized baryon-to-charge transport ratio was reported at about 1.84, while a straightforward picture in which baryon number is transported together with stopped valence quarks would predict a value closer to 1. In practical terms, the experiment observed substantially more baryon number transport than could easily be explained by the amount of transported electric charge. Because gluons are electrically neutral, a gluon-based junction offers a natural way to separate these two quantities. The result does not by itself provide a direct image of a baryon junction, but it creates a serious challenge for the simplest assumption that valence quarks alone carry baryon number through these high-energy collisions. The Starr conclusion did not rely on only one type of collision or one measurement. The researchers combined three independent approaches. One examined photon-gold interactions, where the incoming photon itself contributes no baryon number, allowing scientists to track baryons originating from the gold nucleus. Another analyzed gold-gold collision data collected at different energies, studying how net protons appeared across different regions of rapidity. The third used the ruthenium and zirconium comparison to test whether baryon transport remained linked to electric charge transport. Together, these measurements produced a consistent pattern. The data disfavored the simplest velociquark-only interpretation and were qualitatively compatible with the idea that a gluonic baryon junction helps carry baryon number. However, researchers are careful not to claim that the question is completely settled. Alternative theoretical explanations still need to be tested, and future experiments will be important in determining whether the junction picture is truly the correct description. The baryon junction concept is not new. Versions of Y-shaped gluonic configurations were discussed during the early development of quantum chromodynamics, the modern theory of quarks and gluons, in the 1970s. Later theoretical work proposed that such junctions might help explain how baryon number could be transported over large distances during high-energy particle collisions. The problem was that the idea was extremely difficult to isolate experimentally. Under normal circumstances, the three ends of the junction are connected directly to the same valence quarks, so measurements often cannot tell whether baryon number is following the quarks or the gluonic structure between them. RHIC changed that situation by creating collisions energetic enough to separate momentum, electric charge, and baryon transport in measurable ways. What was once mainly a theoretical possibility has now become something scientists can confront with experimental data. The new results do not mean that the basic three-quark description of the proton is wrong. A proton still contains two up valence quarks and one down valence quark, and quantum chromodynamics already tells physicists that its interior is much more complicated than three isolated particles. The proton also contains large numbers of gluons and constantly appearing and disappearing quark-antiquark pairs. What may need revision is the simple idea that baryon number should be pictured as 1/3 permanently attached to each valence quark. The RHIC measurements suggest that the proton's baryon identity may instead be connected to the topology of its gluon fields. That would be a subtle but important conceptual shift. Rather than belonging only to individual particles, one of the proton's defining quantum properties may depend on the way the strong force field connects those particles together. Protons are among the basic building blocks of ordinary matter, and their extraordinary stability allows atoms, planets, and living systems to exist over immense periods of time. Understanding baryon number is therefore closely connected with some of the deepest questions in particle physics. The new star result does not explain by itself why the proton is stable, and it does not solve the mystery of why the observable universe contains far more matter than antimatter. What it may reveal is something more specific: how baryon identity is physically represented inside a proton, and how that identity survives and moves during intense interactions. A better understanding of baryon number transport could improve models of high-energy nuclear collisions and deepen our knowledge of quantum chromodynamics, one of the fundamental theories describing nature. Although RHIC completed its final collision program in 2026, scientists will continue analyzing the enormous amount of data collected by its experiments for years. Future measurements at other facilities may provide even stronger tests of the baryon junction idea. Researchers have pointed to experiments at CERN's Large Hadron Collider, Jefferson Lab's Continuous Electron Beam Accelerator Facility, and Brookhaven's Future Electron Ion Collider as possible ways to investigate how baryon number is distributed inside protons and nuclei. These experiments could help determine whether the gluon junction is genuinely the main carrier of baryon number, or whether another mechanism can reproduce the same observations. The current evidence is compelling enough to challenge the simplest textbook assumption, but physics advances by testing competing explanations repeatedly rather than declaring victory after a single result. The proton remains one of the most familiar particles in science, yet more than a century after its discovery, its internal structure continues to reveal surprises. The latest star measurements suggest that the property identifying a proton as a baryon may not simply travel with its three valence quarks. Instead, evidence points toward a Y-shaped gluonic junction connecting those quarks and potentially carrying baryon number independently of electric charge. Researchers have not directly photographed this junction, and the interpretation still requires further experimental testing. But the combined RHIC results make the idea increasingly difficult to ignore. If future experiments confirm it, physics textbooks will not need to erase the familiar image of three quarks inside a proton. They may simply need to add something crucial between them: the gluonic architecture that could be carrying one of matter's most fundamental identities.